What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we have a Stanley Cup champion for 2011-2012. Congratulations go out to the Los Angeles Kings on their 6-1 victory last night over the New Jersey Devils in Game 6 of the Cup Final, and of course, congratulations go to them again on their 4-2 victory in that series. I, of course, also want to congratulate the Devils on getting to the Cup Final, which very few people thought that they were going to. I did. But very few people thought that they were going to make it to the finals. Congratulations to them. Great season. Marty Brodeur turning back the clock, playing like he did 10 years ago. It was a great thing to watch throughout the entire playoffs. So let's talk a little bit about the final series. I want to get it out of the way right away. So again, I said the Kings won the series in 6. I predicted that the Kings were going to win the series in 7 games. I'm calling that a victory, which means that my final prediction record for the NHL playoffs for this year was 8 correct and 7 incorrect. So I did with the NHL playoffs what I couldn't do with the NFL playoffs, and that was finish over 500 in my predictions. I couldn't have done that without going 5-2 down the stretch. After the first round, where I went 3-5, I went 5-2 from the second round and on. So, yay me. I said in the previous video, this isn't scripted, this is real life, unlike Timothy Bradley versus Manny Pacquiao, but we won't talk about that in this video. And I really, really enjoyed this series. I know there's a lot of people sort of talking crap about the series, like, oh, it was boring and da-da-da-da. I've heard it from a lot of different sources. I don't really know what you expected from a Kings-Devils Cup Final. You have two teams who are at best two-way and at worst defense first, with two of the best goaltenders in the world. And you expected it to be, I don't know, did you expect it to be Penguins Flyers? Like, I don't know exactly what you guys who are talking down about the series expected to see, but I got exactly what I expected to see, which was a tight-checking, low-scoring, very strategic series, and one that I thought was very, very exciting. So I got my money's worth. I mean, I didn't pay anything, but I would have got my money's worth even if I did pay something. The Los Angeles Kings, of course, have set multiple records, or not so much set records, but they've done multiple things in this playoff series that has never been done in the NHL before. They become not only the first number 8 seed to win the Stanley Cup by defeating the number 1, number 2, and number 3 seeds in their conference, but they become the first number 8 overall seed to win the Stanley Cup, period, which was phenomenal to see. And there's another thing that they did, a very elite group that they joined that's not really being played up in the sports media. This year's Los Angeles Kings become just the 4th team in NHL history, alongside the 1971 Montreal Canadiens, the 2000 New Jersey Devils, and the 2009 Pittsburgh Penguins, to win the Stanley Cup after making a coaching change mid-season. Only been done 3 times before this year, when they brought in Sutter, and Sutter changed the entire dynamic of that team. It was a great thing to see how the Kings just like immediately sort of changed their identity. They became all about their role players, and we're going to talk a little more about the role players in a minute. Since coming on mid-season, the Kings won 49 of 61 games under Daryl Sutter. So, I mean, that's 49-12, including the games that they won in the playoffs. That is spectacular. That is the impact that the right coach can have coming into this team, coming into any team, and having the conviction to really change the culture around the team. And that is exactly what Sutter did when he came in. Let's talk a little bit about Game 6, because if you look at the final score in Game 6, 6-1, you got to think, wow, like, the Kings really blew them out, right? Like, man, New Jersey must have just run out of gas, or maybe Brodeur's not as good as we thought he was, and da-da-da-da. Let me tell you something. Game 6 was a lot closer than a hell of a lot closer than a 6-1 score is going to tell you. Obviously, we all know by this point, Steve Bernier took that 5-minute major and a game misconduct for that check from behind. And you know what? I'm not going to complain about it. It was the right call. Bernier earned a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for that hit. The precedent had been set all through the playoffs that was what that penalty is going to be. You might hear the dogs barking in the background, and I apologize if you do. But if you take that Bernier penalty away, either he pulls up and doesn't engage, or he comes around and he goes for the puck instead of trying to take the body. However you do it, if you take the penalty away, and yes, I know we're getting into a strong hypothetical situation, but just bear with me. If you take the penalty away, that's 3 goals that you take away from that power play. Boom, boom, boom. They scored 3 times on that 5-minute power play. So you take away those 3 goals, boom, 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 all of a sudden it's a 3-1 game. I say you can also take away that empty net goal, because no team in their right mind, if they were only down 3-1, is going to take their goaltender out with 4 full minutes left in the game. I mean, if they were only down 2-1, they're not going to do it. That's way too much time. Even if the Stanley Cup is on the line, you don't take your goaltender out with 4 full minutes left. So you can take that empty net goal away too. All of a sudden, this is a 2-1 game. And this is exactly where New Jersey likes this game. If they can be tied or down a goal in the 3rd period, that is where this team likes to be. This is the rope-a-dope style that I was talking about. Yeah, I talked about it in the previous video, how New Jersey has played a rope-a-dope style the whole playoffs. That's where they want to be, in a 1-goal game late in the game. Because they've had guys like Kovalchuk and Henrique and Parise and Ryan Carter who have come up and played so phenomenally. Or Brian Giunta, I can't not mention Giunta, who played so phenomenally late in games. So they're comfortable being there. So if you take the Bernier penalty away, and you don't have those 3 power play goals, boom, 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 that they scored in that 5-minute span, and that empty netter, which was just, again, strange. I understand that you're down 4-1, and the cup is on the line, and you take your goalie out with 4 minutes left. I can kind of understand it, but if you're not down 4-1, if you're only down, say, 2-1, you don't pull him with 4 minutes left in the game. So if you take that away, this was a much closer game for the majority of the game than people are giving the Devils credit for. However, that's only a hypothetical, not based in reality, and of course, that's not what happened. Kings win the game 6-1, but my point is, it was a much closer game than people would give it credit for. How big is that deal for Jeff Carter at the trade deadline? The Kings go out, deal for Jeff Carter at the trade deadline. They brought in Mike Richards, of course, reuniting them from their time in Philadelphia. Jeez, I'm getting dogs barking, I'm getting car horns, getting everything in this video. Just tossing it all in there for you. The deal for Jeff Carter at the trade deadline, and all he does is come in and score big goals in the playoffs. He had 4 goals. All 4 of his points in the Stanley Cup Finals were goals. All 4 were goals, and he scores the Stanley Cup clinching goal. How huge of a pickup did Jeff Carter end up being for the Los Angeles Kings? We've talked so much throughout the whole playoffs about the depth of the Devils, like their 3rd and 4th lines, guys like Bernier, guys like Henrique, guys like Giunta and Carter. What about the Devils' depth? I mentioned it there when I was talking about Sutter and these role players. You have guys on here like Trey Lewis, you've got Nolan, and you've got King. Those 3 guys, Lewis, Trey Lewis. Trey Lewis plays for the Mooseheads. Sorry. You have those guys, Lewis, Nolan, and King, who combined for 5 game-winning goals in the playoffs. That is your depth coming up huge for you when you need it most. So again, we talked about the Devils' depth pretty well all playoffs. And Kings aren't too stingy in that department either. Of course, as I predicted, Jonathan Quick wins the Conn Smythe. I don't think that should come as a surprise to anyone. His final numbers on the playoffs, and I got them right here. 16-4, 1.41 goals against average, .946 save percentage. He had 3 shutouts, and when it mattered most, in the 6 Stanley Cup Finals games, he gave up 7 goals combined in those 6 games. That is the very definition of a playoff MVP goaltender. Although, you know, it might have been kind of close with Anze Kopitar. When it was all said and done, Kopitar led the playoffs in goals, led the playoffs in assists, led the playoffs in points, and led the playoffs in plus-minus. So, I mean, it could have ended up being kind of close with Kopitar. I think I would have been upset if Kopitar would have won it based on the fact that, you know, Quick is the only guy on the team that played every minute of their playoff hockey. So I would have been upset if Quick wouldn't have won. And you know, the stories that you can pull out of this Cup final, they just keep going. There's so many stories you can talk about. Luc Robitaille finally wins a cup. You know, he joined the Kings as a draft pick the year I was born, 1984. And now you fast forward 27 years later, 28 years later almost, and he finally wins his first cup. And it's such a great thing to see. So I'm really, really happy for Luc Robitaille. Just waiting that long to win his first cup. He didn't get to win it as a player, but you know what? He finally, and that was a great image. Handing the cup to Luc Robitaille and Luc Robitaille lifting the cup up over his head was a great image. Turning our attention a little bit back to the Devils now, the big question for them, of course, is, will Martin Brodeur be back? He said that he's pretty well, he wants to come back. He hasn't made up his mind 100% yet. And you got to remember, it's hard for this, because, I mean, he's 40 years old. He's got a family. And he's been doing this for years and years and years. And at some point, you got to finally sit back and say, you know, I got to take time. It's time to start the next part of my life with the rest of my family and everything like that. If his numbers are any indication, Marty Brodeur still got game. And I think you can tell that just by looking at the guy, but Marty Brodeur still got game. Playoff numbers, 14-9, 2.12 goals against average with a .917 save percentage. Very, very good numbers. So, I mean, he's still got the game to play in the NHL, at least for another year. One of the big issues with this is he may come back, but will he be back in New Jersey? Brodeur is an unrestricted free agent starting, I believe, July 1st, at $5.2 million. That was his cap hit last year. That's a lot to ask for as a 40-year-old goaltender, even if you did just take your team to the Cup Finals. $5.2 million bucks, big cap hit. Speaking of cap hits, we got to wonder whether New Jersey is actually going to be able to keep this team together. And for this portion of the video, I send out a heartfelt thank you to the guys over at Cap Geek, because you have given me all of the information I could possibly need. The members of the Devils who are now free agents, really it rips the core of this team right out, and they're going to be hard-pressed to keep the whole team together. This is a full list of New Jersey's free agents that they have now heading into next season. They got Parise at $6 million. Is Parise in for a raise? Could he ask for more than $6 million? He has been their best player, arguably, so could he be in for a bit of a pay raise? You have Ponikarovsky at $1.5 million. You have Ryan Carter at $750,000. Is he in for a raise based on the way that he played in the playoffs? Sikora at $650,000. Jansen at $525,000. Bernier at $525,000. Gionta at $512,500. Is he in for a raise based on the way that he played in the playoffs? You have Fane, who's a restricted free agent, at $542,500. You have Salvador at $2.9 million. Is he in for a raise based on the way that he's played in these playoffs? You have Harold at $550,000. Brodeur, we already mentioned, $5.2 million. Big hit. Their other goaltender, Johan Hedberg, at $1.25 million. You add that up, and it's going to be at least $21 million to re-sign those guys. At least. Even if you don't give any of them raises, it's going to be $21 million. The Devils already have $42.5 million locked up in the 13 players plus 2 buyouts that they have on their roster. You add all this stuff together, it's going to cost this team at least $64 million if they want to ice the same team this year, or next year, that they did this year. At least $64 million. Further compounding this is the fact that we don't have a solid number for the salary cap for next year. Right now it's set tentatively at $70.3 million, which is a big jump up from this past season. But the CBA expires September 15th. So they're going to be back in there trying to negotiate a new CBA again. And, I mean, the cap is not going to stay at $70.3 million. There's no fucking way that this cap is going to stay at $70.3 million. So, the Devils are going to be hard-pressed. Especially if Brodeur wants to come back, and wants to come back in New Jersey. They're going to be hard-pressed to keep this team together. I think they're probably going to find a way to do it, but they're going to be hard-pressed to keep this team together. That's it, guys. That's what I thought about the Cup Finals. Again, I really enjoyed the series. I can't understand where some of the hate's coming from people. Maybe you can try to elaborate for me as to why, if you didn't like the series, why didn't you like the series? Try to let me know in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We're going to be retiring the jersey for another year, which is good because fucking stinky. Retiring this for another year. We got the draft coming up very soon, just a couple of weeks. So I always look forward to the draft. I always take those 2 days off of work and I do it for the NHL draft. I do it for the NFL draft. I absolutely love the strategy and stuff that goes into the draft, especially the NHL draft. There's just a more special feeling, for me anyways, as a Canadian, around the NHL draft. Thank you guys so much for watching all these videos, making these videos some of my most popular ever. My Who's In, Who's Out videos up over 3,500 views, and that's just phenomenal for me. It's a big chunk of my total viewship, but I'm so happy that video and all of these videos really blew up the way that they have. Thank you so much for watching with me. NFL is just around the corner. Getting into some of my fantasy leagues. Cannot wait. I have a Finest Listography episode coming up, I think, where I'm going to deal with my top 25 NFL fantasy players for 2012. So I can't wait to do that. Again, thank you guys so much. You guys are the reason that I do this. I love doing this. I love seeing the views. I love seeing the positive comments. I love seeing the negative comments, because the negative comments are really fun to screw with. So anything you want to throw at me, bring it on. Thanks so much, guys. I'm Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Stanley Cup playoffs, over and done with. But remember, training camp's only a couple months away.